Hello, is there anybody there? It seems I'm all alone again. Is anybody there? This planet's empty. I see no signs of life. Please don't tell me that the human race did not survive. There are no people in the future. There are no people. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people card. Where I guess I'm flying.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Yes, it is Monday, February 5th, 2024. February's coming in with a bang. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop Live. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. On Out to Coop Live, we talk to progressives, activists, and troublemakers of all sorts right from our own backyard and across the country. You can also join us at the end of the week for our Friday Politics Roundup, where we break down the good, the bad, the ugly in state and national politics. And you can get all our shows by subscribing to our podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And you can support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/RCPress for all the details. And you also help out the show right now. Head over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you'll know every time that we go live. And if you're one of our awesome podcast listeners, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen on, and leave a comment to let folks know why you like the show. Little things like this help other people find the show. And if you're looking for more PA progressive talk, tune in to the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check out thericksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. And the Sisters of the Night Caucus, they're fantastic. Got to check out their podcast. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house. And they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at the Night Caucus. That's at the Night Caucus on Twitter. And subscribe to their podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you haven't heard, The Signal is a new podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. The Signal is hosted by the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril Michaleko, and produced by this guy right here, yours truly. Twice a month, The Signal shines a light on right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. Cyril invites guests who can provide insight, analysis, and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community toward calmer, saner, progressive routes. And in case you missed it, the Beacon also just launched its new Gen Z focused and hosted podcast called The Civic Circle. Yeah, The Civic Circle is hosted by Bucks County Gen Z Lens folks. Sarah Zhang, Mallory Marzan, and Alexandra Coffey. They're students from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Once a month, they talk about activism, advocacy, and all the political happenings affecting their generation today. You can check out that, thecivicCircle.podbean.com, or check out The Signal at the BucksCountyBeacon.podbean.com. And attention all you gamers out there, The Gaming is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show. They've got everything from retro N64s, latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops, and kids get discounts when they get A's in their report cards. You can't beat it. Check them out on their Facebook page. Follow them on Twitter at The Game In. That's with 2 N's. Got a question about a game, look for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Shout out, of course, goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. You check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongADayMan. Again, 2 N's, at SongADayMan on Twitter. Well, we got a very special show today, everybody. On today's show, we're taking a break from our focus on PA to take a trip up north to the Central New York region. Yes, the place I grew up, where it all started. We'll be talking to James Meyers, a Democrat running for the New York State Senate in the 53rd District. The 53rd is significantly different following New York's redistricting in 2022. The 53rd now includes my hometown of Utica, includes some of it before, Utica, New York, and Meyers hopes to defeat Republican Joseph Griffo in this fall's general election. This is an opportunity that just is presenting itself, and so we thought we'd kind of get in right on the ground floor. Meyers is running for the 53rd New York State Senate District with the aim of bringing a fresh approach to representing Central New Yorkers in their state government. He's a veteran with a strong background in service and leadership. He grew up in a working class environment in upstate New York in a family who dedicated their professional lives to the service of others. After graduating from SUNY Brockport via ROTC scholarship with a degree in history, he accepted a commission into active service as an intelligence officer of the United States Army. He currently holds the rank of Major in the Army Reserve. And while serving with the U.S. Army Reserve, he earned his master's degree in strategic intelligence. His military service led to a position with Allianz Science and Technology, a government contracting firm in Rome, New York, where he was responsible for the management and completion of million-dollar projects. His love for Central New York and the influence of his family, his education, his military career, and his civilian experience, James is motivated to serve the community with the same passion and dedication he has and continues to serve our country. Meyers is running on a platform of transparency, accountability, and putting the needs of his constituents first. He's an advocate for public safety, economic development, accessible and affordable health care. Can't wait to get into this. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Kevin, and your viewers, and those appreciate that introduction.
Hey, you got it. You know, I'm thrilled. Like, this is it's great to have. You know, I mean, I always look for opportunities to connect to see what's happening on kind of back of the hometown, as it were. And I should, by full disclosure, we've got Sean Mahoney. I don't know if you recognize that last name, Sean Mahoney, working as your campaign manager, which is absolutely phenomenal. And it's like so great to have this opportunity to really shine a light on a really interesting and intriguing moment in the politics of the region.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting time. I think, all across the country, of course, we're going into quite the year from presidential all the way down. I'm sure we all know that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to, as you mentioned, being able to introduce myself to both your viewers, and I'm beginning to introduce myself to a lot of the folks here right in my region, as they've been represented by the same gentleman for quite a long time, and we're looking for a change. So I'm excited to hopefully be that guy that can bring it and explain to both your viewers and folks up here why.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've already kind of done part of it for me, like, because they explain it here, reaching out to people. But I want to give you the opportunity. Like, I gave you a little bit of bio, gave you the resume version, right? Here's kind of some of the background. But I'm really interested in for you to kind of introduce yourself to folks who may be listening to this on our podcast or watching you kind of live stream now. And again, anybody who's watching the live stream now, feel free to kind of comment and pose your questions. Be happy to kind of take them. But can you talk a little bit about just kind of that background that we heard a little bit about kind of in the intro, and kind of what got you to this point? You know, what gets you to guy going through the Army, then kind of making it into private sector, and now just making this decision to kind of step forward again in that line of service and kind of run for office?
Sure, of course. And thanks again. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, and this, I tell people, might sound a little cliche, but to me, it's not, and it's important to me, which is just that idea of service, right? I mean, I haven't really known anything else since 19 years old. I met a guy that I worked with at a local grocery store who said, "Hey, you ever thought about joining the Army?" I said, "No, actually, I haven't." But so he introduced me to ROTC at SUNY Brockport, outside of Rochester, New York. That's where I was going to college. I was getting my history degree at the time. And, to be fair, what was also a benefit was, hey, we can help pay for school. Absolutely. You can, maybe see the world. And I said, that sounds like something I could be interested in. And I got involved with ROTC there, and I never looked back. I actually very much enjoyed the time I spent at Brockport. I met some wonderful people, honestly, from the folks that ran the ROTC program to the folks that I was in school with. There was some great people out there, and it kind of hooked me into this life of service, I suppose. And from when I commissioned, and that was 2010 when I commissioned into the Army as an active duty intelligence officer. I served on 4 years. I served on active duty for 4 years after that, from 2010 to 2015. Was able to experience a lot of things, lived a lot of places. Most of that time, my full-time duty was in Fort Gordon, Georgia. I was with the 513th Military Intelligence Brigade down in the Augusta, Georgia area. Mm-hmm. Had a tour overseas where I served in Jordan in 2013 during that time. Then I always knew that I would likely get off of active duty after that time, but I always wanted to continue. I had looked at opportunities in the National Guard and into the reserves. And when I left active duty in 2014, actually had a brief stint where I lived in Maine for a short time. I was in a relationship with someone that was from Maine, and I found a job with a company that you had mentioned actually in the intro, Alliance Science and Technology. They had a location in Bath, Maine, doing shipbuilding work. Mm-hmm. And I was there for a short time. And then they said, we have a location in Rome, New York. And I knew that was, for me, that was a good place to be because it was close to where I grew up, closer than I had been in a while. And I moved back to the upstate New York area. And I felt like this region was very similar to where I grew up. And I met a lot of great people. So I did move back here in 2015, worked at Alliance since then, and continued to serve in the reserve component since then. So I'm now, like I said, a major in the Army Reserve. Been serving since 2015 in that capacity, and continued to work, like I said, at Alliance, managing contracts up in size up to $10 million. So I just wanted to bring that service aspect. I've always been interested in government and politics. As I've been here too, I've sorry, the word I was looking for. I volunteered for multiple campaigns since I've lived here too, right? So I worked on a couple congressional campaigns, and then I worked locally last year on a mayoral campaign. And ever since then, that just kind of gave me that bug to continue that service. And I said, I'd always wanted to do something myself. And this year really gave me that opportunity to be able to step up this year and do that. So I know that's kind of a little bit of a long-winded answer, but it's a road that has taken me here. And that's where I am now.
No, and I got to say, something about your background really stuck out to me when I was, kind of getting familiar with your bio and kind of some of your history there too as well, is, we've seen really significant changes and transformations throughout the kind of Mohawk Valley. I mean, we see, SUNY Tech kind of getting up there and this becoming a hub. We see chip manufacturers locating here. We see the transformation of Griffith Air Force Base from that kind of, when I grew up kind of knowing how far I lived from Griffith, because that was going to be one of the first targets that was be targeted in nuclear war. So we knew how many seconds we would have to survive. And you go to Ilion because it's downdraft, all this kind of stuff. But there's been a significant transformation. And I think that, the kind of experience that you've had working in this tech field, working in the intelligence field, and outside of that area where you're kind of bringing that kind of expertise to back at a time when that seems to be really exploding in terms of its kind of economic development and so on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think this is when you look at the kind of job opportunities that are here now and in the future, the things like the chip factory that we see here, it's in Marcy, New York. That's Wolfspeed has come in here, and there's a lot of job openings right now that are looking to be filled, which can be a big boom for this area. And then, because it's something you mentioned too, and a lot of people mentioned this to me, like I didn't live here yet in the early 90s, but I've talked to so many people about that time and what this area was when it was an active duty Air Force base. And we're getting back to that.
Yeah.
People feel that again, the ability to get back to that with how many tech companies are here in that Griffiths corridor. And outside of it, there's a drone corridor here now. There's only a few in the country, and one of those is here, right? So we're talking about, technological advancement that most people don't, when they think of upstate New York, unless you're here and you're part of this. I think we need to sell that story to people so they understand, like, hey, maybe I want to move to Utica, New York,
yep,
or upstate New York, or outside of Syracuse, because there are good jobs there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, and so that's why I just think that that seems like such a good fit, just more broadly, right? In terms of a broader understanding of kind of what's actually happening in the area and moving. Because, I was one of these folks that kind of left the area in the 90s, like when everything seemed like, okay, everything's gone, everything's shuttered up, everything's going here. To see this boon and this revival happening right at this time, some of your experience coming here makes a lot of sense. So let me, before we get into specifics of your platform, I'm just curious especially for folks who are not from the 53rd, right? People who might be listening to my show here in Pennsylvania and so on. New York State had a huge redistricting process happen in 2022. And the 53rd district is not the 53rd district of the 2022 election. This is a completely new district. So I was wondering what are kind of your thoughts about the composition of this new district that you're running in, and what may be some of the kind of the challenges or opportunities of kind of putting your hat in the race at this point?
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Kevin, because I think that is an very important point here. So, in some a little bit of more background too on the incumbent that is currently in this district. So Joe Griffo has held the seat that encompasses at least the Utica and Rome area since 2008 as a state senator, running unopposed since 2010. So I think there's a lot of opportunity just in that aspect. But this is the first year, as you mentioned, that that these lines have been redrawn. So the district used to go all the way up to Canada, that he represented, and that was the 47th district. Well, now he represents the 53rd district, which includes still Utica and Rome. However, it goes much farther south of Utica, and it goes much farther west of Utica, almost to the Syracuse line. So it includes all of Oneida County, all of Madison County, and a small portion of Chenango County, and actually 3 townships in Herkimer County. So it's much different than it was. And in my mind, I look at that as an opportunity because Senator Griffo has not represented the folks out in Madison County, out closer to Syracuse, in all of those years that he has been a state senator. He's clearly, he has represented Utica and Rome, and he has a bit of a foothold in there. But that's something I think we can overcome. The numbers too of registered Democrats compared to registered Republicans is in our favor. It's something that, as long as I can get in front of those folks and introduce myself, both folks that he has represented a while that haven't had another choice for one, and now they will, to folks that don't know him, that the opportunity is for me to introduce myself and kind of infiltrate those areas.
Yeah, and I think that, kind of exactly what you pointed to, too. I mean, the fact that somebody has gone unchallenged for so long, right, is something that so many of us are familiar with, right? That especially during times when you had gerrymandered districts. And if anybody looks at, there's great comparisons kind of online. You check out the New York State websites and Ballotpedia and stuff. They'll give you, I don't know, people will see this, but they give you the nice little comparisons here. And in the comparison maps, you'll see that the kind of original maps, especially for the 47th, was, this really like crazy looking snake kind of dragon thing going forward, right? It was all over the place. This one is much more kind of compact, much more kind of adjacent, makes sense, right? Like you said, most like Oneida County, Madison County, good chunks of other counties, then a couple towns over Herkimer County. That's makes a whole lot of sense, just as a kind of a constituency and area that's not being kind of, cherry picked for a political party, but rather getting to represent a particular constituency. So that's phenomenal. And just to your point there, so everybody knows what we're talking about statistics. About 41% of the district is now a registered Democrat, 41.1%, while only 26.4 Republican or 24.6 the no party preference. Now, again, you don't want to overread those numbers, right? Because our politics have been in a bit of a disarray in this country for a while. And I know that is also true in central New York. But that as an opportunity to kind of, as a new person coming in, especially saying, hey, look, we've got opportunities ahead of us. We're not looking backward. We're looking forward, right? We see the future, right, together. So, can you talk a little about, so when you're out there talking to voters, right? I mean, you've got this platform. You want to talk about transparent and accountable government. You want economic prosperity, education, workforce development. We got safe and healthy communities, veteran support, labor issues, workers' rights. Take us a little bit into what you see, like what the landscape looks like to you, right? As somebody who wants to come in and represent this region. And then some of the stuff about your aspects of your platform and maybe some examples of how you want to approach that. What are some of the kind of proposals that you're thinking about? Who are the people that you're talking to that you're bringing into your campaign to make sure that you're kind of listening to the people on the ground? Kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. And, first example I'll give is I went to a somewhat like a town hall last week that was held in Utica, and it was focused on public safety. And Utica is one city in the district. It's the largest city, and I wanted to first start getting folks in Utica's kind of the pulse on the city of Utica itself, and understand what some of their major concerns are. And unfortunately, like I think a lot of this country, there's an issue with gun violence, right? So the majority of the comments of people in that audience was our kids don't feel safe, especially the Utica City School District itself and some of the folks the kids that go there, and not feeling like their representatives are addressing this issue in the best way possible. And when I think about how to address something, it's a multifaceted issue, obviously, with a lot of ways to it, things that need to be done to address it. But clearly it's not, again, when I look at an area that's been represented by the same person for a very long time, when you start looking at issues that aren't getting resolved, I think that means it's probably time to do something different.
Yeah.
It's time for a change and to look at how we can do things better. And when it comes to gun violence in particular and crime, we have to look at the root cause. There's a lot of poverty in Utica, New York. There's a lot of poverty in the rural areas outside of Utica, New York. So we have to address that at a low level. Bottom line is, we need to, obviously, gun legislation is important, and making sure we, the folks that shouldn't have easy access to firearms don't have easy access to firearms. But New York State has we have laws on the books that are some stronger than in some other states in regards to that. So that can't be the only way we look at this, right? So looking at poverty, looking at our mental health resources in the area, I think is a huge aspect of that. And we have to look at that starting from the schools. Are we resourcing our school districts with the right enough mental health professionals? And I've talked to folks that say no, right? The administration officials, that they're not getting the resources they need. There's not enough social workers in schools. There's not enough psychologists in schools. And I think that's somewhere we can start, right? Is there enough after school? I mean, simple as after school activities. I mean, people were mentioning these things at those town halls, right? There's not somewhere for kids to go after school is over, right? And then that just leads to, unfortunately, not always, but sometimes to when there's free time, they're not getting into making the right choices. So we have to look at this holistically, and it seems to be the minds of most voters, right? At least in the city of Utica, public safety, and looking at that in a holistic way, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when you talk about that, like safety and healthy, like in healthy communities, I mean, it's so refreshing to see those brought together in the ways of thinking about safety, right? Getting out of okay, is safety simply a matter of kind of law enforcement, right? So, we have an argument of is it just that? It's like, it's not to say that law enforcement's not important, right? But it's just say, what a community's safety is, the health of a community is based upon so much more, what you're kind of running through. I'm just reminded of my recent visit to Utica. I was kind of back home for the holidays and stuff. We went down into, one of these vibrant areas in Utica in the Brewery District, right? Where you've got, all sorts of kind of cool development that is happening, new stores happening, lofts coming in. But at the same time, you go a block and a half off that, and you have homes that are falling apart.
Yeah.
Right. You have it's right next to one another. Right. And so the question over the long term really is police alone are not going to solve that, right? In order to make sure that those families can thrive on both sides of that divide of development, right? We need to kind of think about a holistic development too as well, right? I mean, that
Yes.
becomes part of a question about health and safety of a community.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sometimes make lines of what all these different policy prescriptions are, right? But almost when I talk about safe and healthy communities, and I include public, I'm glad you kind of caught on, right? And I'm not, and that's how I wanted to describe it, right? Safe and healthy communities to me is both public safety and mental health care
Yeah.
and public health care, but it also goes together with economic prosperity and education and workforce development. They're not all separate issues, right? They all go together. And that economic prosperity piece is going to be a key driving factor in bringing down that crime and making sure people feel safe, because that goes right to that poverty issue we're talking about. Unless we're empowering folks that right now might not have the economic means, and then they're in a spot where they're left to potentially make choices that they wouldn't make otherwise, to that effect, right? So it all goes together, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So when you're looking at that kind of economic development component, I mean, I always find this interesting about Central New York politics too, as well, is that on the one hand, there's always the complaint about downstate, right? All the money goes downstate. New York gets all the money, right? But that's the same thing. It also becomes kind of an excuse for not doing anything, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, the people throw their hands up in the air like, well, there's nothing we can do. But you seem to have kind of like a sense of really, no, this economic development component is going to be really important. So when you're out talking to folks, whether it's at these town halls or whether it's, you're talking to other business leaders or kind of development, where do you see kind of economic development happening? Or what are some of the places that you think provide us with some, I don't know, maybe models or positive directions? How do you see that happening?
Well, again, we have to start looking years ahead too at jobs of the future. And I think even it's something I didn't mention when we talked about some of the new businesses in the Griffiths area that are high tech. We also have a new hospital that just opened in Utica, New York, and it's a high end, state of the art, brand new hospital.
Yep.
That's taken the place of a couple hospitals that were here previously. And that is also bringing in a lot of new jobs, and a lot of new folks had moved into the area because of that. So that's one. So healthcare is an industry that only is going to continue to grow, I think, in this area. But then we also, and we haven't touched on this some yet, but climate, right? So jobs of the
100%.
future. Jobs of the future are going to be green jobs, I hope, and I think that part of the government's responsibility as we look forward is making sure that we're positioning not just cities and downstate, but these more rural areas to foster what's going to be the green jobs of the future and continue to attract folks to places like upstate New York, where there's a lot of land out here. There's a lot of natural resources, and it's a ripe area for that as well. And it all, in part of it too, and I know you briefly mentioned one of my bullets is education and workforce development. We have some great education institutions in this area, and what we call the Mohawk Valley right up here, which is this Utica Rome area, and making sure there's a direct pipeline from those education institutions to these jobs of the future that we're talking about. Training programs, that train these folks for those jobs, I think is just extremely important. And there's some of that, like there's a program I've heard of called Real Life Rosies, which was a straight program to train women for these jobs, right? So we need more programs like that. And that's, it's also going to keep folks here rather than, if you got an 18-year-old that goes to a community college here, rather than them do that and then leave, right? Maybe go to a 4-year school somewhere else and not come back. Tie them to one of these jobs of the future. So I think we just have to look at it as in a holistic way.
Yeah, and if I look at, you talk about, kind of growing up in a kind of working class neighborhood, working class areas and stuff. It's, as much as we hear about education as, the solve all thing that this will solve everything, right? We also know that the vast majority, like, first of all, we know only about 35% of people actually go on to college, right? Like it's a 4-year degree in this kind of like thing. And a lot of folks, right, who grow up in working class communities will go to college, but they stay in that area, right? And what I think a lot of time, I mean, we saw this firsthand kind of growing up, is people were leaving because we saw the opportunities disappearing. And for that idea to be thinking forward, where you're saying, okay, look, not only can you get a good education here in community college, not only can that connect you up to some of these institutions, but we've got these organizations, we've got these businesses, we've got these opportunities for you to help build this future. And I think that's exciting, especially that, keeping families together, like especially kind of in rural areas where there's, look, that's your family and it's your kind of community, right? Why would you want to have to kind of move to like Ohio or some other state or something like this, or other part of the country where you're gonna break up that community? It seems like this is going to become all the more important going forward.
Yeah, and exactly what you said about a lot of folks, and something I want to hammer too is, like you mentioned, not going. A 4-year degree isn't always the end all be all. These trade jobs,
exactly,
that we're gonna need even in these same industries, the green energy industry, the semiconductor industry. We need folks, apprenticeships right after high school, for instance,
100%.
to get them into those types of positions. And again, with education being how expensive it is, a lot of times it's just not. It's more beneficial many times for students or young people to do those types of jobs rather than go to a 4-year school or even get a master's degree, for instance.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think, I've been involved with kind of union movement pretty much my entire life, right? I mean, by family, right? Long roots in family. But then, I'm a unionized faculty member now, right? I worked as an organizer with SCIU when I was a grad student up in Syracuse. I worked with the American Federation of Teachers, like for a summer doing research in the higher education in DC, right? So, I mean, seeing those kind of connections there. And I was embarrassed when I took a job at Kutztown University. I started working with this, it was called the Labor Education Institute. I got a guy was leaving, asked me if I wanted to take it over. It's my second year. I was like, what the hell? I'm just barely got my foot on it. But we started working with the Reading Area Labor Council, which is in Berks County, Pennsylvania here. And one of the things that I learned about for the first time in my life, right, even in being involved in a union family, was about what apprenticeships were. Right. And of course, Sean, that's what apprenticeships are, right? The fact that you, instead of going on to like a trade school where you're going to incur debt, right, to learn a trade and then hopefully you're going to get a job, to get a union apprenticeship job, right, to get paid and trained, right, in those skills is impressive. And what they were doing in kind of Reading was they had a labor in the schools. They get the apprenticeship programs into the schools so that they were saying, yes, okay, you're going to get these opportunities here, but why don't we kind of think about trying out this apprenticeship on this kind of like, on a short-term basis so you can see if this is for you. And so then people became aware of it, that the only option wasn't college or my future's in the tank,
Right. Nope. I co-sign with everything you just said too. I 100% agree. I think trade jobs, union pays for training and education in some instances, right? And those are high paying jobs with no debt, right? I mean, it's a win-win, I think, for a lot of folks.
100%. So let me ask you this. So if you're kind of, you're out on the campaign trail, you're talking about you're talking about what you hope, you're talking about why you're running. What are the kind of things that you hope folks are left with, right? What do you want them to walk out of that room, or for that matter, leave this discussion, right, with about what you're trying to do, why you're running, and what you hope to bring to, once you're elected, to bring to the table?
Yeah, I think I want folks to understand that change is possible. They don't have to, we don't have to just, and I hate to use the word settle, but a little bit, right? There has been a choice. There hasn't been a choice in a long time. And I feel like I can bring some change and service to this district, and give people that, and a different perspective, right? So, again, as we've mentioned, Senator Griffo in particular in this race has just been in this position for a long time. And it's, of course, I want to be involved in public service. I think that's a notable profession and it's important. But I also come at it now with being part of the military for many years, being part of the private sector for many years. It gives me just a bit of a different perspective in not being in that same role for the last 15 years, for example. So I think something that I've been able to develop over those years is understanding how to bring the right people together, and I have a very diverse staff already, for example, on the campaign staff that I can get different ideas from because their perspectives are going to be different than my own, for example. And I think something that I've always found that I do well, or at least I've gotten a lot of experience in doing, is listening to all those different varying opinions and coming together with what might be the best solution for everybody, right? And I just think that I want the people to understand that they have that choice now, that they're not just, that the same, they don't only have, again, one choice to represent them in their Senate district. So, and I hope that my service too, as a younger person, someone under 40 years old, that comes in with some vigor, maybe, and I want to work hard for folks, and I feel like I'll come at that every day. And this is a new challenge for me, so I'm going to come at it with fresh eyes, and the work ethic that I've brought to, being a pretty young, I was in a leadership position since I was 22 years old, commissioning into the Army. And I've had to bring that work ethic and that leadership to everything I've done every day since. And I just want to continue to do that. And I think that this gives me the opportunity to do that. And I want to listen to the people. And I think that the last thing I'll mention is that transparent and accountable governance piece is important to me. And I don't think that enough of our elected leaders are having town halls. They're not going around talking and actively listening to every personnel in every corner of their district. So I think that's something and I mean it when I say it, that I want to listen and talk with all the folks and hear what's important to them by actively listening. So something that I pledge to do when in office, even something as simple as a regular newsletter to folks so they know what I'm doing in Albany, and they can reach out to me because I want to be accessible. So I think that's something that I would leave with people here, that and anyone here in this district, is that I'm there for them, right? This isn't something I want to do for me. This is something I want to hear and build a platform. I'm also building my platform based on what I hear from these folks. So as I crisscross this large district with these new cities, I'm excited to hear what their concerns are, what their issues are, what their aspirations are, and how I can help.
Well, I'll tell you that transparency and accountability piece is really resonates here as somebody who's just gone through, been part of the school board wars here down in Pennsylvania, where part of the issue was finding book bans and finding our curriculum being changed with outside of the of an informed public, where people had to use right to know requests in order to get basic information about what's happening in our schools. And a lot of school districts in the area start realizing too, is like, well, and not just school districts, but townships and things like this. Well, you know what? We just need a baseline of transparency to know what's going on. So at the very least, when issues come up, that we can approach them and we can kind of respond to them in an effective way. And, I was saying this, this is before I even knew that you were running, or, Sean was working on this campaign. I was talking to somebody about some of my friends down here about Central New York and about my hometown, about my home area. And I said, for so long, the region I come through, I was saying to them, Central New York feels like for so long it was a narrative of loss. right? And people had to hold on hard to things that they lost, the things way used to be. And I said, what we really need now just seems to me, you guys, we feels it like right on the cusp of we need somebody who can say, not being focused on so much of what once was and what we have lost, but what could be, right? What's right in front of us? What is right around the corner? But that means that we need somebody, you need a fresh face like you to be looking forward and not backward. And it seems to be that kind of theme in my mind is like, here you go. It's a new district, right?
Yeah.
You got the guy who's been representing the place forever, and you got a fresh face coming here looking forward to the future. I mean, this seems to be like a match made in heaven, I hope.
Yeah. No, again, a hope and prosperous future for Central New York is what I was talking to some folks about last week. So exactly what you're saying. I think the future is bright. And you do unfortunately get a few of those folks that you mentioned that say, well, maybe our path, but the majority of people I talk to is starting to see it, right?
Yeah.
Is starting to see it when they see these new jobs coming in and they see what we can do here based on these opportunities. So yeah, 100%.
Well, wonderful. Well, listen, before I let you go, I don't want to keep you like too long here, but I could talk about this stuff all day long and pick your brain about it. And hopefully we get further on in the race here, especially if it goes on. I'd love to have you back on and talk about where things are at that point. That'd be fantastic. But right now, if you got folks that are listening or kind of just starting to pay attention to what's happening in the campaigns now, where can people get more information? How can they get involved? How can they help donate to your campaign? What would be the most helpful for you? But let them know how they can get in touch and how they can get involved.
Sure. If people want to check out a campaign website, first they can go to that, which is just James-Meyers, MEYERS.com. And that has my policy positions. That has the ability to donate if they'd be like to do that. And then they can even sign up to receive what we're going to be sending out newsletters as we get going here. That ability to do that is on the website. And the ability to volunteer if they live here in this area or not. We'll be wanting to phone bank at some point, and we'll be starting that as we canvass later on. So all of that is available right on james-meyers.com.
Well, and I'll make a special appeal for people to get out there and special sign up to volunteer, because I can tell you firsthand what turned our district, where I am here in Pennsylvania, what we kind of won, completely flipped school boards, completely flipped kind of our county seats to Democratic Party control. It had everything to do with people knocking on doors and just talking to everyday people and having those conversations. That is what made the difference, having people on the ground knocking doors. So if you are in this area, you are in there, you can knock some doors, you can get out there, you go get to his website, james-meyers.com or .org.
Yes, .com.
Head on over to that website, sign up to volunteer, and get out there. And look, I know it can be intimidating, especially if you've never done it before, but I can promise you're in good hands, right? You got family involved here. I can tell you're in good hands, right? Get out there, knock some doors, and talk to people. It's just meeting people in your community and talking about that bright future that James hopes to bring here. Well, James, are there any last words that you want to kind of bring to people before we head out?
No, again, say thank you so much, Kevin, for having me. This has been great. Really appreciate coming on, being able to talk to folks both in your district and mine. And I'm just ready to get to work. I mean, that's what we're doing up here, right?
100%.
Getting to work.
100%. Well, let's get to work, shall we, folks? James, thank you so much for coming on the show. I wish you kind of all the best. We're going to be paying attention to your race. Kind of always, like I said, kind of open invitation to come back on. I got issues that you want to talk about when I get out there. It's absolutely fantastic. Everybody, please do check it out, james-meyers.com. Get that information out there. And look, we're going to be following the race, and best of luck to you going forward.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
All right, you got it. All right, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. Want to remind you that you can help support this show. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head over to patreon.com/RCPress for all the details. Oh, man, we got some good shows coming up here. I wish I can give you all the details, but there's just not enough time right now. So watch your socials, everybody. See ya!
I guess I fly away.